The final phase of hospitality development requires turning a bare concrete structure into a highly calibrated operational asset. Making that transition requires purchasing thousands of individual items in a tightly compressed timeframe. This covers everything from complex industrial kitchen installations down to the toiletries in the guest suites. Purchases to speed up their specific tasks. When dozens of managers spend capital outside of central oversight, the meticulously planned pre-opening budget can be derailed in a matter of weeks. To survive the pre-opening phase without exhausting capital, individual departments must be stripped of their financial autonomy. In its place, the property must install absolute systemic control. Bringing order to this expenditure is the direct mandate of the Director of Finance, executed through the Centralized Procurement System Standard Operating Procedure, or CPS SOP. This procedure establishes a singular, auditable pipeline. Every single purchase, regardless of the department initiating it or the dollar amount involved, is forced through the exact same sequence of checks and approvals. The entire system is built upon one architectural axiom: the segregation of duties. The CPS is configured so that it physically prevents the individual who initiates a purchase from also approving the final payment to the vendor. By forcing multiple independent parties to touch a transaction, the hotel prevents internal fraud, eliminates budget bloat, and assigns clear accountability to every dollar spent. The requisition-to-payment flow operates in 4 mandatory stages. It begins with Phase 1, requisition. A department head inputs their operational requirements, detailing the item, quantity, and delivery date. Before advancing, an automated cross-reference checks the request directly against the approved pre-opening budget line item. If the requested item does not exist in the budget, or if the price exceeds the allocated limit, the system intervenes. The violation triggers an immediate, automatic hold on the request. The process remains entirely frozen. It will not advance until the Director of Finance conducts a manual review and explicitly approves a budget variance. By enforcing this strict sequence, Phase 1 guarantees that zero capital is committed to external vendors without explicit internal budgetary authorization. Once the internal request is approved, the system advances to Phase 2, purchase order creation. The validated requisition is handed over from the operational department to the procurement manager. The procurement manager is responsible for translating that internal need into a formal purchase order. The purchase order functions as the hotel's formal legal commitment to the vendor. Generating it locks the exact specifications into place. It establishes final pricing, technical requirements, and non-negotiable delivery terms. For exceptionally high-value purchases, specifically capital expenditures or CapEx, the standard approval limits are insufficient. These orders trigger the authorization matrix, routing the PO from mandatory secondary signatures from the Director of Finance or Ownership. Phase 2 acts as a legal firewall. The hotel only assumes financial liability under terms that have been strictly negotiated and authorized by leadership. The digital authorization process is now complete. The sequence then moves out of the system and into physical reality, the critical stage of goods receiving. When the trucks arrive at the property, the physical delivery of goods triggers the next mandatory node in the CPS sequence. This activates the hotel's primary financial control mechanism, the three-way match SOP. The receiving department's specific duty is to physically count and inspect the delivered cargo, generating an official receiving report based on what actually arrived. The receiving department is blind to the vendor's invoice. They verify the physical delivery strictly against the locked specifications of the purchase order. By creating an unalterable physical record of delivery, Phase 3 protects the property from paying for damaged, missing, or incorrect items. We finally reach the 4th phase, invoice processing and payment execution. The vendor submits their final financial demand, the invoice, directly to the finance accounts payable team. Here, accounts payable executes the final, defining step of the three-way match SOP. They must reconcile 3 distinct records. The vendor's invoice amounts must perfectly match the legal terms of the purchase order and the physical reality of the receiving report. The system authorizes the final transfer only when this reconciliation is flawless. The final payment is then scheduled and executed strictly according to the vendor terms originally established in the PO. Phase 4 guarantees that cash only leaves the property when the legal commitment, the physical delivery, and the financial billing are in absolute alignment. Looking at the complete requisition-to-payment flow, we see how the segregation of duties is maintained from end to end. This sequence provides total systemic governance. It removes individual discretion and replaces it with an interlocking verification process that tracks the life cycle of every single dollar spent. By relying on automated budget checks, locked purchase orders, blind physical receiving, and three-way invoice matching, the property enforces fiscal discipline. Without this architecture, the sheer volume of transactions would cause its financial foundation to collapse long before the first guest arrived. But a digital system is only as effective as the humans enforcing it. The Director of Finance carries the ongoing responsibility to relentlessly train the general manager and all department heads on navigating this exact chronological flow. In the rush of pre-opening, operational friction is inevitable. Department heads will often be tempted to speed things up by bypassing the process. The operational consequence for bypassing the SOP is absolute. The finance department will simply refuse to process the payment to the vendor. Because the hotel has not authorized the debt, the burden of the expenditure falls directly on the individual who initiated it, resulting in personal liability. In the high-stakes environment of a hotel launch, the Centralized Procurement SOP serves as the absolute law of the financial environment.